You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hey mamas, welcome back to another awesome episode of the Mama Work It podcast. So glad you're here. If you are new in town, my name is Marissa Lonick. I am your host and I am the founder of Mama Work It, where we support women in the juggle of mom life, work life, wife life, fill in the blank life. Today, we are talking mostly to the boy moms, although I will tell you, Rachel Sklar, our guest, she's got some amazing advice that even if you do have girls, will probably be helpful. So she is a dynamic speaker, parent coach, and the founder of the Boy Mom Academy. She helps moms of boys who are emotionally explosive, highly sensitive, or aggressive when they don't get their way. She teaches her Boy Mom method to parents looking to raise future leaders with high levels of social emotional health, confidence, and great relationships with their parents. Her approach to parenting is heart-centered, no nonsense, and fully customizable to the individual strengths and challenges of every family. She is also the proud mom of 3 of her life's best teachers, her 3 sons, all boys. I am so excited to welcome Rachel to the show. As you guys may or may not know, I am also a boy mom times 4. So I am just thrilled to be diving into this topic. Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Well, I would love to just hear a little bit more background about who you are, your journey as a boy mom, and just, introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah. So I've been supporting parents for over 15 years in their journeys. And as a boy mom myself, I made it my business in the early years to figure out exactly what it takes to keep these guys close to me. You know, when I first became a mom, I had my first boy and I was like, okay, there's still time to have a girl. And then I got another boy. Okay. And then I waited to have my third baby until I wanted a baby, not just a boy, or I'm sorry, not just a girl, you know? And so the universe sent me 3 boys. And, you know, I really, I had this image in my mind that in order to be close with my adult children, I needed that mother-daughter bond. And when I saw I wouldn't have that with, you know, my kids, what I thought was this ideal, I said, you know what? I get to define what it means to be close to my children. And I get to do the work now to figure out how I can have the kind of relationship with them that's going to be inspiring. And so that's what I'm doing. That's what I did for my own kids. And now I support other parents in having that same outcome. And I've got 3 teenage boys who are menschy. I mean, they're kind, they're sweet, they're close to me, and they are hard to raise.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that that is your why. I feel like a lot of times this is like one of those unspoken topics that we don't think about or talk about, where we think about when our kids are adults, if we're going to be close with them. And I remember when I found out my first kid was actually twins. So we had 2 boys to start, and we didn't know the gender until about 18 weeks when I was pregnant. And when I found out they were boys, I remember journaling that day and just saying, I really hope they're close to me when they're older. So like I can really empathize and relate to what you're saying. And it's not that boys aren't close with their moms when they're older, but like as a woman, I'm very close with my mom. And when I observe my brother, not as close as I am. So I think it's just, like some things that maybe like we've grown up with or we've witnessed, or maybe just our own internal beliefs. Yeah,
exactly. And that, you know, that mother-son relationship became the thing that I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand, what do they need from us specifically? What is it about the way our brains are different that we can lean into, we can leverage. I always say one of the best parenting books I ever read was actually this book called How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It. Because I actually learned so much about my boys and that they want to connect as badly as I do. They just go about it differently.
Yeah.
And if I could learn what that is, then I'm ahead of the game, right? And that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely. It makes sense that that book would be helpful. Yeah. So, what's the connection in your work between raising boys and raising future leaders?
Right. So this is one of the reasons that I'm so dedicated to this work, because I've got my eye on the long-term prize of raising a generation of men that do better. Okay. So I just would invite everybody to kind of imagine your son as an adult, right? Go on an adventure with me. Just kind of imagine him as an adult. And then think about the context he's in, with the history of the Me Too movement and school shootings and rape culture. And if those two things are too far or too painful, like just think of locker room talk and trash talk on the basketball court and the bullying problem we have in America. That's what our boys are swimming in. Mine are too. But someday those same kids, they're going to be our doctors and our bosses and our politicians and lobbyists. And hopefully they'll be doing it alongside a lot more women than we have now out there. But that change will come slowly and not without the help of a lot of incredible male leaders, right? So how we raise our boys today, I just think it matters. It just matters to the future of the people they interact with as they age.
Yeah. Yeah. I never thought about all those aspects. My oldest boys right now are 11. And so I'm not quite there with some of those sort of environmental factors, right, in parenting my boys. But it is interesting to think about. And there are these kind of circumstances and things and, things to consider about challenges they are facing or just like things going on in our culture right now. And
Yeah. Well, I would say that even, 11 years old, your oldest is just similar to my youngest. My youngest just turned 12. But I think that from the time that we are dressing them in truck, t-shirt, onesies, they get messaging from the beginning that boys and girls are different. And they start to see it in the TV shows that they watch and the media they consume and the billboards they see, that male leaders have power. And we want to raise our boys from out the gate, from the beginning, not to wield their power in ways that are unhealthy, right? We want them to wield their power. They have power, so we want them to use it responsibly. And I think that starts in the way that we correct them when they're wrong, in the way that we maybe use consequences to discipline them and to control their behavior. I always say the way we set limits with them is the way they will one day set limits with us and others.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I just, yesterday was thinking, what if my kids said to me, if you don't drive my kids home from school after school, then I'm not going to let you see the grandkids anymore. Right? Like how we say things like, if you don't clean your plate, then you can't have screen time tonight. Right?
Oh God, are you like in my house?
But imagine if one day they turn that around on us or on their colleagues. I don't want that for my kids and for the future. And so how I handle these little things, even when they're 6 years old, right? They're learning now how to be leaders by watching us lead them.
Okay, convicted. I need this conversation more than I thought. All right. What else could we do when it comes to like raising these boys, raising our sons to show up as the kind of leaders, the kind of humans that are kind, that don't threaten us to not be able to see the grandkids, like all the things that we're hoping that they turn out to be?
Right. So, I always say boys who feel good act good, right? So if your son feels worthy and feels valued, that's going to translate to him valuing others and treating others as worthy, right? Boys who feel whole and complete will see others as whole and complete and worth treating well. And, I always think I'm raising my children like they're like raising mirrors, and there's actually a neuron in the brain that literally, the mirror neuron, has us sort of match the mood in the room, for example, or it has us tune into other people's vibes, right? So I'm raising a mirror. You know? I'm reading this novel right now. It's called Fix Her Up. And I just asked for like a trashy, sexy novel for my cruise last week. Okay. And the male character is just like, so interesting as a boy mom. So the male character, he's neglected as a child. He was threatened by his dad, abusive, right? Now he's this famous, hot baseball player who's getting objectified in the media. And he's like a complete womanizer. Okay. It's a little bit cliche, but he meets a woman who doesn't put up with his crap. And he falls for her because she makes him feel worthy, right? For the first time ever, he feels worthy. But he's never been in a relationship with another person where he felt valued in his whole life. And so, of course, he's making a complete mess of the relationship because relationships take practice, right? And so what we want for our kids is we want our boys to practice being in relationships where we value one another, right? And yeah, so I just think we can raise them to value themselves and value others if we're careful when they're young by keeping our eye on that long-term prize of saying someday this is going to all turn around and you're going to reflect back how I treated you to others. And so it's on me to treat you well now.
Yeah. So good. So good. Yes. We recently took one-on-one walks, the older boys and I, like one at a time. And during that time, we had some like good, deep conversations and we talked about love languages, what their love languages were, and kind of, it was really interesting to me because what I thought they were, they weren't. Mm-hmm. And so I'm consciously trying now to be more mindful of how I express my love based on how they told me they like to receive it. And I feel like that's just one tiny little example, but like even something that's small, like maybe you're the type of mom that's not a real hugger, but your kid just loves hugs. Like that's one way to make them feel valued, is kind of what I'm taking away from what you said, is something really simple like that.
So I would challenge you to go a step further, which is to think in terms of their connection language. So love languages, we have this book, we have these five love languages. And of course we can extrapolate and expand on them for ourselves. But I like to think about what are my kids' connection language? Because of course, expressing love is one thing, but then there's also those little moments, I call them micro connections, those little moments in the day where you give them a high five in the hallway, right? I always like flash the I love you sign behind my shoulder in the car, when they're sitting in the back seat. Just little things that we do that help them feel like they belong and they're connected to us. And this is their space. This is their place, right? Whether it's in my heart or in my actual physical house, right? They feel like they matter. And how, especially for boys and the female brain, the mother-son connection, back to that, my connection language as a female and their connection language as a male is different on the whole. I mean, this is data and generalization, but boys tend to connect over shared interests, whereas the female brain tends to be more person-oriented. We can chit-chat for a long time and feel really connected. And so for my boys and all of my clients, I help them figure out what's their son's connection language. But for me, my son's connection language is like literally chess and the Rubik's Cube, right? It's me diving into his hobbies with him that makes him feel really important. It's not just about how I show love, but it's how I say to him, time with you matters.
Yes. Yes. And time doing things you like to do. Mm-hmm. So I better start learning more about Fortnite.
Right.
And all these other things. Okay. Yes. Noted.
Yeah. I mean, I can I used to know all the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors stats because my kids are really basketball. Yes. I became really interested in falconry and dart frogs. I mean, all kinds of things that I don't actually care about, but wow, am I an expert now?
Rachel, I know. I watched my first NFL game just like 2 or 3 years ago, and now I know more about football and basketball and yeah, than probably a lot of my friends.
Yeah, and you might not think, oh, NFL is the love language with my child. It's not. It's the connection language.
Connection language.
It's
Okay.
how you get in the back door when your kid doesn't want to hang out with you.
Yeah, that's so smart. I never heard of that before. That's amazing. Okay. So you have something called the boy mom method. What aspects of the boy mom method are useful in other realms of life? Like not just raising boys, but how can they help us at work, at home, in our marriage, maybe?
Yeah. So just to kind of briefly say what the boy mom method is. So it's kind of,
Yes.
I mean, it's what we're talking about already, but really it's, it's prioritizing our relationship with our boys over being right as a way to, I call it connection management over behavior management, right? It's really managing that relationship with them first and foremost. The next one is really partnering with them, being problem solvers and team players. We call our family Team Sklar. So we are clearly a team. And then it's about really setting them up for success in an environment where systems and routines, the house is functional. My reactions to your, bad behavior is functional and effective, right? So I think, one thing I hear all the time from moms that I work with is this works on my husband, right? And that's because it's relationship science, right? I mean, when I was training to be a parent coach, I first learned business change theory and then applied that to families. That's how the Parent Coaching Institute does their coaching training. And so now I coach on this model because if you think about, this is how it will work with your colleagues as well. If you think about two humans, we share 99.9% of our makeup, right? So there are just some universal truths that we can lean on when it comes to relationships. And I just like to apply them to mothers and sons because that's the kind of people that I work with. But so if we know that 99.9% of us are similar, so we can lean on some universal truths about the need for belonging and then, and psychologically how we thrive, right? Then there's that extra 0.1% that just makes us different. And that 0.1% is what holds the code for how we customize our approach with different people. It's why you treat one colleague differently than another. But those two colleagues, just like kids, they need to feel seen. They need to feel heard. They need to feel a deep sense of belonging and worthiness in order for them to give that back to the world, like mirrors, right? And so I feel like when people learn the boy mom method, it's actually a way of them developing their relationship skills for their whole life. But the gift that it is to their son and the trickle down effect on the people that he is in relationship with, to me, is how we make the biggest ripple effect into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's often the main why for people, right? Like being a mom, being a parent is probably ranking pretty high on their list of responsibilities, or like, when they compare it to other hats they wear, it's the number one hat. And so it's a good driving force for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people experience it like a lot of pressure, but I encourage you to experience it like a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Like what an honor to raise this generation to do better.
Yeah. 100%. So I know you said 99.9% were all similar in that way, but how much does that 0.1% of like a boy's unique temperament or personality determine which parenting approach is best for him?
Yeah, it's such a great question because, when people come to me, they're like, well, I read this book. I tried this. I listened to Dr. Becky. I've consumed all of this Instagram content and it's not working. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, because we as parents, we need to figure out what works for our individual child's temperament. And it's not only temperament and personality, it's also the environment they're swimming in. So back to that 0.1%, that's where you have to look to find which approach is best for him. Now, a lot of parents will learn that through trial and error. You know the expression throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? To see what sticks.
Yes.
Most parents throw spaghetti at the wall and they stop there. And they just say, well, I threw spaghetti at the wall and, and I'm still suffering. My kid is still misbehaving. He's still aggressive. He's still not getting along with friends. He still won't turn off the screens and clear his plate and, get fights with siblings, right? And so step 2 is that part of seeing what works, that tracking what actually works and what doesn't and why. That's where parent coaching comes in, right? So we all have blind spots. I know it's painful. And we have them. I have them. I have this really clear memory that I was thinking about yesterday where I went on a retreat with a group of parent coaches. And on the way back, one of them, Emily and I were flying back together. And I was a wreck about my son, my oldest son. He's 17 now, but he was maybe 8 at the time. And he's what we call a highly selective eater, AKA super picky, right? And
I like that term.
and I could not get him to take a healthy lunch to school. And so he would just go hungry every day and then come home cranky because he wouldn't eat the food that I was sending. And she was so gentle and so amazing. And I was telling her that I have so much shame around sending him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because I have all this conditioning about how it's junk food and not serving him this, like, what I promised myself I would give my children, these really healthy foods and everything. And she was just so gently pointed out this huge blind spot that I had. And finally, I walked away from that conversation going, I'm just going to let him eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the rest of his life. Because if my relationship with him, if that's what it cost my relationship, to have a relationship with him. And so there's no shame in having blind spots, right? But what we need to do is we need to be saying, what am I doing? Is it working? Is it not working? And then start leaning into what works in a way that is mindful. It's what I call mindful parenting, not mindfulness, but mindful parenting is the parent who is really focusing on, okay, this worked. Why did it work? I need to go back to the drawing board and tweak it a little bit or figure out how to introduce it into my, family systems more and more and more. Right. Mm-hmm. And now I will tell you, my son still eats a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, even at 17 years old, but we have a great relationship.
We're super close.
Eater. Yeah, he's still a selective eater. He still has a really hard time. He's highly sensitive, and that's okay because he's able to be with me without any shame around it.
Yeah.
And that's what will help him grow as he ages. He'll make different decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine this is also, if you are a mom of multiple kids, this is also something that's different for each kid. The way you connect, the way you discipline, the way you feed them, and that can be a little tricky, I think, because at least in my house, we've got 4. We're trying to instill the rules for everyone, right? The routine for everyone. Otherwise you get that's not fair or this and that, feedback. But what are ways you can sort of adapt that to the different personalities while still sort of maintaining the holistic foundation?
Sure. So you want your values system to be strong, but how you execute that for each kid is going to be different, And so back to this eating example, my younger son, who's not as selective an eater, he has different rules around food. And so we don't make fairness the goal. We are like, you guys are different. You've got different needs and you're going to get different rules as a result. And we're really upfront about that. I parent them each so differently because their personalities could not be more different from each other. And yet, especially my older 2 sons who were, enemies as little ones, right? Their sibling rivalry was so bad. And now 15 and 17 years old, they are attached at the hip. They go nowhere without each other. Last night, my oldest son was applying for a job to be a referee for soccer. And as he was filling out the application, he was like, well, what about Levi? He's not available this weekend for the training? I was like, you can get a job that he doesn't have. It's okay. They're completely attached. but I mean, I can't begin to describe how different they are. One super introverted, one extremely out there and extroverted. And yet they have this really close relationship because they've learned the importance of prioritizing their connection with each other over being right.
Love that.
Yeah.
Gives a lot of moms hope, I bet, who are experiencing that rivalry right now. Absolutely.
Yes. No, the boy mom method it's not like subscribing to one way of parenting. It's about figuring out what works for your unique son.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I can't not ask this question because I know we've got listeners with girls, with daughters. What about the girls? Like, what can be applied to raising them? I know you said this is really a holistic method that works on kind of anyone and everyone, but is there anything specifically you want to mention with regards to that?
Yeah, so I actually have a lot of clients who have girls, and I love working with them. I happen to have a group program called the Boy Mom Academy, which you mentioned, where I create, support groups for moms of boys. But my methods apply to girls as well, with one caveat, which is that when we're talking about the mother-son relationship specifically, and the way the male and the female brain tend to be different, we can learn what sort of connection strategies we can come out the gate with for our boys and test. Like throwing spaghetti at the wall, you're going to throw a different kind of spaghetti at the wall for girls, right? But again, it's back to relationship science. Girls also want to feel seen and heard. They also need to be set up for success, right? They also want to learn problem solving and learn how to collaborate with others. And so I think all of the methods are applicable. What's special about the boy mom method is that it gives moms of boys permission to say, in the future, my relationship with my son and our closeness can be as close as any mother-daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. I mean, there's it's kind of like an extra layer you're adding with the boy mom method because as a mom, you're female. You're raising a male son, right? There's sort of like something you've never experienced before. When you're raising a daughter, I mean, I don't have a daughter, but I can imagine if I were raising one, I would think back a lot to ways that I was growing up and I'd be able to hopefully relate that to what she was feeling or going through. But I don't necessarily have that experience with my sons. And so there's sort of like this additional challenge or layer that I imagine the boy mom method filters in.
There's a constant projecting that we do onto our kids. Well, when I was a kid, we used to XYZ. Why don't you guys do that? And I think with a girl, when you're projecting, your projections are more relatable to her.
Right. Well, there's just like a different layer, I think, of empathy because you've actually walked in those shoes, maybe in those situations at that level, right? And not that you maybe haven't walked in the shoes of your son, but from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, Rachel, we're just about at the time in our show where we're going to move into the lightning round. This is where I'm going to ask you just some fun, random, personal questions about you so our listeners can get to know you better. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. What if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life? What would it be? Calories don't count. I imagine it's not peanut butter and jelly.
Not peanut butter and jelly. It's actually bagels, cream cheese, and lox. That is my comfort food.
So good. Yes. As a native New Yorker, I can really appreciate that.
Put a fried egg on top of it and I am in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. What book are you reading right now?
Well, I'm reading that book I mentioned, Fixer Up. That's just for fun. But then I'm also reading Gabor Mate's book, Scattered Minds, about ADHD. And I'm learning a lot about myself and a lot about my clients from that.
Love it. Yeah. What is your cocktail of choice?
Can I say a CBD drink?
Go for it. It's your cocktail of choice.
I'm not a big drinker. But when I go to a party, if they offer a CBD, a sparkling CBD drink, that's what I would grab.
Okay, cool. I've never heard of this before. I learned so much on this show. Yes. Oh.
They're like 2.5 milligrams of CBD. And they're just like, I much rather feel the relaxation that comes from that than the sort of dizziness that I might get from a cocktail.
Yeah. Okay. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I would want to make money grow on trees and give it away.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Grow the $100 bills.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
what if you could just like snap your fingers and money could grow on trees and then you could share it and you could have,
Totally.
just like change your money mindset.
Yeah. It's such a tool. It's such a tool that can be used for good. Yeah.
Right. Philanthropy. I mean, it's, I'd love to be able to give away more if I could, than I do now. But it's like, there's like living in the Bay Area and what goes along with that.
Yeah. 3 boys to put in college.
Exactly. Yes. So we're getting close to that also.
Totally. All right. Last question. What's something most people may not know about you?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to blow your mind right now, but I have 33 half siblings.
What?
That I know of.
Please tell us more.
That I know of. So my parents used a sperm donor to conceive me. And I did the 23andMe test in the very beginning, early adopter. And it took about 4 years, but a half sister reached out to me who was conceived by the same donor. And shortly thereafter, another person showed up in our 23andMe account. And so now with genetic testing and more and more people doing it, is like every year we have more and more people come into this group. And actually out of there's 34 of us right now, about 20 to 25 of us are pretty close. We're going skiing together this weekend. I'm going skiing with one of my half brothers. So all of them I met as an adult and are actually quite similar to me in a weird way.
That is incredible.
Yeah, I know. It's like a funny story. Some people are not as comfortable talking about it as I am, in the group and have a lot of shame and secrecy, and I did in the beginning as well. But no, I think it's actually a really amazing part of our history and technology. And it's just I love community. I'm such an extrovert. So it's really fun for me.
Love it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, Rachel. Well, before we officially end our episode today, please tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can, learn more about the Boy Mom Academy. And I know you've got a free gift for our listeners. Thank you for that.
Yes. Okay. So so you can find me at my website, sklarparenting.com, SKLAR. It's my last name, parenting.com. You can learn more about the Boy Mom Academy by watching my free webinar, which is there as well. So you just need one link to get there. And it's a 4-step framework for raising a kind and cooperative boy without being 100% consistent. And that's the important part, is consistency is not required. I know you hear about that you have to be consistent. You don't. Got good alternatives to that. So you can click on that and watch the webinar. And then I also have a webinar for just teaching you the introduction to the Boy Mom method so that you can learn what it is and you can start implementing it right away. So I will give you the links to share with everybody for that as well.
Amazing. And I know you've got a discount too for Mama Work It listeners. So thank you for that
as well. So we're going to be sharing a discount code, and everyone's going to get $100 discount off of the Boy Mom Academy when you register. You'll use that discount code, and you can use it anywhere in the sort of in the funnel. So if you see that there's a fast action bonus, when you listen to the webinar, there's a fast action bonus where you get a discount, and this is going to be on top of that.
Wow.
So you'll be able to get a discount on any of my services.
So generous of you. Thank you.
Yes, you're
Rachel,
welcome.
Thank you for being a guest. Thank you for sharing your stories, your wisdom, your tips. We so appreciate it. I know I learned a ton. I'm going to take away a lot from today's episode. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. so head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.